Welcome to episode 10 in this ongoing series where we're building a web application in FlutterFlow. In this particular episode, we're going to do a few more tweaks to our application. Then we're going to focus on creating the sticky note component itself. We're going to get some UI parts of that done. We're going to set up our component state variables, our component state parameters, get them bound to some of those widgets on the UI. And we're also going to modify our application state variable as well to kind of like create a manual sticky note there, just so we can kind of see it all up and running nicely on the screen. If you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel, please do go ahead. If you're a member of the Nocode Academy, it's great to have you here. And of course, please do like the video as well. So without further ado, let's get into the video and let's get cracking. So this is where we had positioned ourselves from the previous episode. I'm just going to make a few little changes or little tweaks to the user interface just to set ourselves up nicely when we start working on the sticky notes. So if you recall back on a previous episode, the title row we set as a 32 padding. Well, actually, I think it's just a little bit too narrow here between the actual kind of the navigation here and this area. I want to bring this in a little bit. So let's just adjust this then to 60, and on the right hand side, let's set it also to 60. Just brings it in a little bit. Then inside the actual notes column, I'm also going to want to adjust that as well, because you can see it's hard up to the edge of the actual navigation on the left hand side. Let's also bring this in by 60. So that's a little adjustment to the notes column like that. So that's brought it in quite nicely. So just one thing to point out here is that if you remember, we called this one the notes scrollable column. Now, if I had set this here to be scrollable, you'll see here that you can see that this is actually hard to the edge here, this particular column. Now what would happen is I'd end up getting like a vertical scroller that would appear over the top of my stickies. So that's not really a great candidate to be actually scrollable. So what I've elected to do is to actually set the notes scrollable column to be kind of to kind of be vertically sort of scrolling up and down. So we'll come back and we'll set all of that up later, but we'll just focus our attention on the sticky notes. So that's all in place for us. Let's now start working on the actual sticky notes themselves. Okay, so let's get rid of the containers that we don't need. Let's just remove 4 of them. So just select the widget in the tree there, and let's just delete the ones that we don't need. They are gone. Now, you guessed it, what we're going to do now is on this particular container, we're going to convert this into a component. So just right click on it and just say convert to component, because again, this could be reusable throughout our user application. Of course, we're only going to use it once here in this particular application, but of course, we could then reuse this elsewhere. We can create little smaller versions of it and all that kind of stuff. We can extend the functionality of the sticky note. But for now, let's give our component a name. So I'm going to call this one note component like that and just say create component. And here we are back into this more simplified view, which is great. So let's give our container a name. So just select that up the right hand side. We'll call this one note container, just like that. So we now need to create a column. So let's go into here as a column. The reason why we've got a column is we're going to put 2 containers in this column. We're going to have one that's going to kind of be, it's going to allow to kind of be more expanded containers, going to contain the actual text of the sticky note. But we're going to fix the size of the other container. And the good thing about it is it means that the container just above will push that one down to the bottom because it's a fixed size. So we've inside our column, let's give our column a name. So this is going to be called note column. Just press that. And then now we can just add a couple of containers in. So just hit that, just hit the actual container here. And let's just add another one in for good measure. Just select that. Now the top container, let's give that container a name. We're going to call this one note content container. Now on the left-hand side, let's select that one. Let's give this one a name as well. Note footer container. Just hit the little tick. So there we go. There's all our containers in. Now let's just fix the size of the note footer container. So this one is going to have a height of 60, but we can get rid of the width. There we go. And in a second, we'll add another widget in there, which will then expand that out. So what we're going to do, we're going to put a row in here. So just add a row in, because this is going to kind of contain the actual date that the actual sticky note was created. And then on the right hand side, we're going to have then some buttons that we're going to put in there to allow you to edit and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so with the note content container, just select that. And let's actually delete these out. We don't need the width and the height. Let's remove the background. So just where it says fill color, let's clear that color. But let's then actually expand this one out. There we go. You can see it's now pushed that fixed height container to the bottom of the row. So this is just classic FlutterFlow kind of base element kind of usage. Okay, you're going to be probably doing a lot of this with inside your own builds of your projects, where you're kind of using other containers to kind of push containers down to the bottom. So yeah, this is just good technique to kind of get used to. So with inside the note content container, hit the little plus here. Let's put a column in there as well. So you can see that's now positioned like that. And of course, again, that's going to have more widgets inside. Let's just quickly give these widgets a name. So with this column selected, let's move up here. So I'm going to call this one note description scrollable column, like that, because again, this will be scrollable, right? Because the text could be rather large. We want to scroll down, so that will be using it for that. So just hit the little check there. Let's name our other one down here. Just choose the row, go up to here, and we'll call this one notes footer row, just like that. Let's just select the container actually, because we've got the color there. We don't really want this secondary background color. Let's just select that. Let's clear that color out of the way. There we go. Now on the actual note container as well, we need to kind of round the edges of this as well. So just with that selected, let's move over here. So I'm just going to choose the sort of uniform border radius here. I'm just going to put 16 in here. That's quite nice. And then the size is actually not going to be 200. We're going to actually increase the size of the sticky note to 240, just like that. Let's just make this a little bit larger. Let's just zoom in a little bit so you got a little bit more on this display. There we go. Okay, so next up, let's add another widget into the note description scrollable column. This is going to be another row, so just select that. And then up the top here, let's give this a name as well. Note description row, just like that. And then we also then need to put some padding against the left and the right here. Okay, so we obviously want to bring it to the edges. We don't want it to be kind of hard up against the edges. What we can also do is with inside the actual note column itself, we can give some spacing for both of our containers in there as well, because they're kind of like stacked on top of each other a little bit. So we can bring this one down from the top. So with our note column selected, so what we're going to do, we're going to move over here, just move to the actual start spacing here. So the start spacing is going to be 16. We're just going to bring it off the top a little bit. Now the end spacing, we're just going to say is 8. Okay, we're just going to bring it a little bit off the bottom. We're not really too concerned about that. It can be a little bit more to the root here. But remember, control your positioning quite nicely, your spacing within inside your columns here by just adjusting them there. That's fine. We don't need to put any item spacing in here. So next up, let's now put our text widget actually into our row itself. So with the row selected, choose the little plus here. Let's put a text widget in there. So you can just see it's just nicely presented there. We need to set some kind of some sort of text style properties and all that kind of stuff. So let me just scroll that down here on the right hand side. Now let's just choose the body medium. This is going to have a title. So let's go with a title small. I think that'll be fine. But I think actually, I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll go up to the title medium, just a little bit bigger there, because of course I've zoomed in, of course I'm at 110%. Now with our font weight, I think that's all looking pretty good. We're going to put the line height in as 1.5. So because it's going to kind of contain like, paragraphs of text, we want to put some spacing with inside each line of our actual text. So when this wraps over, it just looks a little bit more nice instead of being a bit too sort of squashed on the actual UI. So let's now give our widget a name. So I'm going to call this one note description. Note description text, just like that there. Now let's move now over to our note for the row. Let's add a text widget in there as well. So just select that. Let's give that a name. Note date text like this. So this will contain the sticky note sort of create date here. Let's just select the note for the row. Let's just pad this also as well over to 16 there. And let's just pad 16 to the right as well. Now let's select our note date text and let's now style this up. So just move down here to the text style properties. So we just need to move over here and we're going to say this is title small. So it's just a little bit smaller than the text at the top. I think everything else is looking pretty good. In fact, I think I might just drop that down. We just want a bit more of a normal weight there to text, so it's not quite so bold. Okay, so I think that's great. That's all of our styling and everything in place. Let's move on to the next section. Let's start then putting some parameters together for this particular component. Okay, so let's commence creating some component parameters. So with the note component selected, we need to now create some parameters, and these are values we're going to pass into this particular component. So with that selected, move up to the right here. You can see top right here says component parameters. Just select that, and we're going to add some parameters in there. So choose add parameter. Now the first one that we're going to add in is the actual note itself. We're going to pass the kind of the schema, the kind of the variable actually into this particular component, and then we're going to hook the text widgets actually onto the kind of the actual properties of that particular note. So with that selected, just choose the type here. Now if you remember, there's one here called a data type. Just choose data type, and then here we want to say the actual type, and it's going to be of note. We're going to keep this as required because this kind of component is always going to expect a note to be passed in. Hit the add parameter here. Let's add another one in here. So we're going to actually create a new one called on delete action, like that. So this is going to be of type action, and what this is going to do for us is that if we want to kind of so choose action here. If we want to kind of invoke something once this is actually being deleted within our actual parent page, then we can actually have a callback that will actually make that happen. We can actually create some actions off the back of it. We're also going to create another one though. We're going to say add a parameter here, and we're going to call this one on update action, just like that. And the type here again is just going to be action at the bottom here, and that's going to be we can actually take required off. We don't actually, oh yeah, we'll take them off. We don't need them actually. We'll keep them off as so not required. So we don't actually need to kind of set any values against those actual parameters themselves. And finally, there's one more parameter that we need to add here. Let's hit add the parameter, and this one is going to be an index. Now this will come a little bit more clear later, but what we're going to do is on our kind of our parent page, everything that is, we're going to have like a list. We're going to bind our sticky notes to a list. Now, in that list, each sticky note will have a unique position within inside that list. And we're going to pass in the position of that actually into the sticky note, because when we actually then delete, we invoke the delete action within inside this actual component, we can actually use that position to then go into our list and say, actually, can you get rid of that one for me, please? And it'll get rid of that one and remove it out. And then, of course, we won't then get any issues. So we're going to pass in the index, and I'll show you how to do that later. And it'll become a little bit more clear as well. So with the type here, this is going to be of type integer. It's going to be a number that we're passing in only, and it's going to be required. We're always going to need to pass this in. So just hit the confirm there, and that's all of our parameters all created. So you can see at the top here that we've got a couple of errors, so we certainly wouldn't be able to run this up at all. Have a look at those. You'll see that it's actually saying that it doesn't specify a value for parameter note or the parameter index. Now, if you remember, we set those as required, and at the moment, this component needs to have that actually set because we've actually got this component within inside the home page. Remember when we converted it to a component? Well, that component is actually there, so it's expecting us to pass in those component parameters, and we haven't provided them yet. So don't worry about that. We'll come back and sort that out shortly. So just click that away. Now what we also need to do is we need to also create some local state variables as well. So this component is going to kind of have its own behavior. So we're going to set up some component state variables for us to use at a slightly later stage. So let's now just add those in. So just choose add value. So with this first one, it's going to be a Boolean kind of indicator. It's going to be is edit mode. So the whole idea of this really is that when we then turn our component into actually editing the text. So at the moment you can see here that we just put a kind of a text widget actually on display. But what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to replace that text widget with a text field widget, so we can actually key that sort of data into. So this is going to be able for us to actually determine whether we've actually moved into an edit mode or we're not in an edit mode. And of course, if we're not in an edit mode, we're just going to display the text. But of course, if we are in an edit mode, we want to then display the text field widget. Now you guessed it, we can use the conditional builder to determine whether we are actually in an edit mode or we're not. But we'll come back and do that at a slightly later stage. But for now, let's put the type here as a Boolean. Now by default, of course, we're just going to keep this red. It's going to be false. We're not going to be in edit mode straight off the bat, so we can keep that like that. Just hit we'll actually hit the confirm there, and we can also then add another field if we wanted to. So just choose add field here, go to field name. Now would you believe it, this one is going to be note. So this is going to be the actual note itself. So let's move down into the data type here, and we're going to select the type note. So what is going to happen here is that we're going to pass the note in from our list of sticky notes actually into this component. And of course, everything is going to get displayed. Now, as soon as this component initializes, we need to take the values out of that and apply those to a local state variable called note. We're going to be making changes to that particular note, which we're then going to be using to either update our existing notes, or we would cancel out, or we would delete, and we would delete that particular note. It doesn't really come into effect there, but the whole idea is that we're only passing in the note really from a visual perspective, but actually what we really want to be doing is we want to be manipulating a local component state variable, which will be our actual note itself, and then we can use that, of course, to then update the note. So I'm sorry if that's a little bit around the houses, but again, you'll see how that plays out when we start getting into the more functionality of this particular component. So once that is done, just hit confirm there. And then we have all of our state variables now all nicely set up for us. And we'll come back in due course and we'll manage those. Okay, so let's now bind our text widgets to the actual component parameters. So let's start with the description first. So just choose no description there. Let's move up to the little text option here. Just select that. Now we've got this component parameter coming in, so we just need to select the note. So this is the earliest opportunity for us to grab hold of the value that's coming in. So just with this available options, choose data structure field. And remember back we did the kind of the custom data type. Well, this is actually looking now for that particular kind of field within inside that data type structure. So just with that selected, choose the select field here, and you can see these are the options that are available to us. Now, the one that we're interested in is description here. So select that, and then we do need to put a default values in here, so just hit the little space in there and hit confirm, and then it will accept it actually within inside the application. So that's now our kind of our note description field now bound. So let's now choose the hello world here. Now this is going to be the actual date and time, so we're going to need to format this. Now thankfully with inside of FlutterFlow they provide some convenience sort of functions for us, will actually then allow us to format the particular date here. So with that selected, move up here to the text here. Now we want to go down into the actual option down here. If we go down here, you see one here called a date time from Unix. Just select that. Now we need to give it our Unix timestamp, which is going to be our create date here. So just select that, move to the component parameters again, select the note, go to available options, choose data structure field again, and then you can select the field, and you can see this is the only one that's white for us, which is the only one that we can choose because it's that particular data type. Choose create date. Now down here, the time unit, just choose seconds here. It can be any of those. Seconds is fine. We do need to put a default value in here. I'm just going to put a 0 in here, okay, and just choose a confirm. The time unit up here, we just need to select that and choose seconds as well. So they're all matching up. So that is all that we need to do. Just hit confirm there. I think that's not actually looking properly. Actually, we need to just move down here. We need to go down here and we need to do date and time format. Something I just forgot to do there. So choose date and time format here. Just scroll down. And here, FlutterFlow gives us a number of examples of all the different kind of time formats that we can have here. We're not going to do a custom one. You've got a custom option down here if you want to get a little bit more creative. But for now, we're just going to choose this particular one here, Monday, January the 8th. That's absolutely fine. So just select that. It's giving you a little preview, and that's all you need to hit confirm. And you'll see now that you've kind of got your format that's in there. So that's all nicely set up for us. Of course, we've still got the errors at the top here. We'll sort those out very, very shortly. Okay, so with all that in place, then that's probably about as basic as we can get with getting our sticky note kind of basic, almost like read-only functionality created. Let's move over to the home page and let's do some additional configuration over there. Okay, so back on the home page, you can see that we're starting to get what looks like a sticky note actually on the screen, which is looking really good. Let's just sort the spacing out a little bit. You can see it's tucked quite close to the sticky notes title. Move over to the content column, and you guessed it, if you've been following along, we need to now start thinking about the item spacing, which in this case is just going to be 60. We're just going to bring that down. That's nicely in line now with our kind of our circles. It's sort of come down, so it's a little bit more pleasing to the eye. And by the way, hopefully you don't mind that I'm running this actually in dark mode now. Saves my eyes and stays the video looking very glary when I'm looking at it. So I'm going to keep it in dark mode for now, but the experience should hopefully still be the same for you. Okay, so with all that in place, then you're probably thinking, well, how do we now start kind of dynamically sort of pushing these sticky notes to the page? Well, there's some pre-steps that we need to do, because we need to configure up one of our widgets now to kind of bind to our application state variable that's actually containing all of our sticky notes. So let's do that a little bit first. Let's go over to the actual notes wrap here. Now, if you remember, this is kind of the wrapper that kind of will position all of our sticky notes in a horizontal fashion. Of course, they'll wrap to the next line. Well, this is a fantastic candidate where we want this now to kind of be almost data bound to our actual sticky notes themselves. So with that selected, move up to this little section up here, this little option here we haven't seen before, this generate dynamic children. Just select that. Now, this is going to ask us for a variable name. So this is going to represent each sticky note from our list of sticky notes that's part of our application state variable. So I'm just going to simply type in the word note here because that's kind of what it is. It's just a note. And then with our value, just select value. And this is going to ask us, well, where is these values coming from? Well, as I said, it's from the application state. So choose app state. And you can see here, this is our notes list. Just select that and hit confirm. And then just as soon as you hit the little save option here, the UI is now going to say, right, we need to make this change. Now we now to generate these dynamic children. Hit confirm and you'll see what will happen. We now start to see this kind of this ghosted look. So this, from a UI perspective, is really just giving us that visual cue that this is actually almost like a dynamic widget here. So we've now got those in place. Now, of course, this isn't going to do anything because we haven't actually added any sticky notes to our collection. But what we do need to do though is we need to configure up each of these sticky notes to pull in that note variable value. And that's really straightforward for us to do. So let's now move over and do that now. Okay, so then within our notes wrap widget, if you recall, we converted to our component. You can see we've just got this single component. So this now represents that note, that sticky note that we need to kind of now bind the note variable that we just created in that notes wrap within that dynamic children section there. And we're going to bind that now to the note component. So with the note component selected, you'll see just down here are all our component parameters. And this is the opportunity where we'll get rid of those errors that's just up there. So quite simply, we need now to pass in this note from our application list, our application state variable. So with that note selected, just choose this option here, and we're going to move down here, and you'll see now that this particular panel is now showing this note item. So this note here is the variable name that we created just a moment ago. So it's a note item. So just with that selected, it's as simple as that. You can just say confirm because we're going to pass in the note. One error will go now, and we've just got one left. Now, going back to that index, we've now got this application state variable that's got a list of all of these notes. We want to pass in the position of that particular index actually into that particular component variable. So just down the bottom here, you've got this index here, just select that. Now, if I move up to this where it says note item, just drop that down and you've got the indexing list. This has been made available for you. So we can now pass that in. Now, just if you're not a coder or by anything like that, then the first position in the index is always kind of 0 index base. So the first one will be 0, and then it'll be 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so just always remember that. Not that actually that really actually applies here too much because everything here is just dynamic, but just a reference to the future, anything in an index it starts from 0 and up. So that's it. We don't need to complete any of these at this moment in time, but you can see all of our errors have now magically gone. Now, if I was to fire this up, then kind of nothing's really going to happen. We're not going to see anything because we're not actually creating any sticky notes yet. But what we can do is we can go into the application state variable, and we can, the application state variable that we've got inside the app state section, we can actually create a sticky note by hand. So we don't need to actually add any functionality in there just to kind of prove that this is all working for us. So let's move over to the kind of the app state section here. So just go to app values here. You've got these notes section here. We can just open up this little list here. We can add an item here directly. So choose add item, tap to the edit the fields. So I'm just going to call this one test sticky note like that. Let's give this a color. Now I'm just going to give it any old color at the moment. So let's just choose maybe the blue color that we got there. Now the date, we can just keep that as the same, and we won't worry about this is new, not too worried about that. Hit the save data. Now, kind of what I'm hoping now is we can now kind of fire this application up, and hopefully we should see one sticky note on the screen. If not, if we've got errors, we'll go back and correct it. Okay, so here we go then. The test mode is firing up. Hopefully we'll get our single sticky note on display. Brilliant, there it is. Excellent, that's worked first time. That's really good news. So hopefully you got the same result as well if you have been following along. Now, this sets us up now really quite nicely for the next episode because we want to start adding some more interaction into our application. We want to start creating these sticky notes dynamically by kind of moving over to the little plus here, selecting one of our colors, choosing the one that we want there. We can start seeing our sticky notes coming up in the middle there. So yeah, so great. Thank you very much for watching this particular episode. Remember, please do subscribe subscribe to the channel. Please do follow us on the Digital Pro Nocode Academy as well. And of course, please do like the video as well. Appreciate all of your likes. It gets it out to the wider FlutterFlow community as well, who are looking for this type of tutorial content. So I'll see you in the next episode.